Hi, this is Elizabeth Griffin, your indie author from South Philly, and today we're going to talk about plotting. There are 7 universal plot structures, and when you break your storyline or your idea down to its core, you'll find that it will fit into one of those 7 categories. I like to call these 7 plot structures templates because when you create a story or when you write, your story is specific and unique to you and your telling of it. So therefore, it will grow, it will change, it will evolve. However, if you want to fit it into a framework, it will be one of these 7 categories or one of the 7 templates. So I'm going to mention them to you. The first one is man against man, man against self, man against environment, man against nature, man against religion and God, man against the supernatural, and man against machine. So when you look at your story and you break it down to its core, you'll find that it can fit into one of these 7 templates. If your story is complex and has subplots, you may find that you'll have more than one template that you'll be dealing with. Let me mention in detail some of the 7 templates. The first one, man against man, an example would be if 2 women were running for a senatorial seat and they both were trying to undermine the other in order to win the election. That would be an example of man against man. An example of man against self would be if a man was attracted to a married woman. He may lust after her and want her on a physical level, but in his heart or in his conscience, he may realize or feel that this is wrong, and he doesn't want this woman to be led into adultery, and he doesn't want to commit adultery with her. That could be an internal grappling with man against self. If you want to look at man against environment, you may find that, let's say, a person from another country was dropped into a U.S. city, and that person didn't speak the language, didn't understand the money currency, and was having a hard time trying to maneuver in this new environment. That would be man against environment. His adapting to the situation, his fighting against the situation. That's an example of man against environment. If you look at man against nature, you could take that same individual and instead of dropping them in an urban environment, you would drop him in, let's say, a forest. In that case, he would be dealing with trying to find shelter, trying to feed himself, battling against wildlife. That would be man against nature. Then if you wanted to look at man against religion and God, let's suppose there was a man that was called by God to minister or preach, and the man decided that that's not what he wanted for his life. So he's resisting God's calling. And then you would see man grappling and fighting against God's will. That would be an example of man against God or religion. Then if you wanted to look at man against supernatural, you would think perhaps about paranormals or vampires or werewolves and how man will be dealing and fighting against those supernatural forces. Then there's also man against machine or technology. An example of that would be, suppose a man was working at a company and then all of a sudden they brought in a new automated system and he's competing against that system to keep his job. That would be an example of man against machine or technology. So when you look at your story and you break it down to its core, you'll find some elements of one of these 7 plot structures in your story. If you look at all stories, you'll notice that, yes, they're unique and specific and different in their telling, but when you break it down to the bare essentials, you'll find either one or more of these plot categories or these plotting structures. So in conclusion, I'd like to say that in order to write well, you should be able to understand these different plotting structures and implement them in your writing. I hope this has been helpful. Please leave comments below if you would like to hear me talk about other topics pertaining to writing. And you can always reach me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Thank you so much for your time and your patience. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up, spread it, tell your friends about it. I'm all about writing and improving writing and bringing information to the public. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Love, peace, joy.